Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, I got a fun and interesting video for you guys today because we're going to be talking about the next evolution of RexGlue Xbox 360 static recompilations. That is because RexGlue, even though it feels old, is still a relatively new project. When it first launched, the developers behind it always talked about the fact that they had future plans for exactly how it was going to work. And as of now, we're going to be going over all of those, and you'll see the transition in new static recomps or Xbox 360 games moving forward. Because again, this project launched with a roadmap talking about where they were and where they wanted to go. And in talking with one of the developers of this, I'm going to explain to you more conversationally than technically what it actually means. Because right now, pretty much every single Xbox 360 static recomp using RexGlue is using Xenia, the Xbox 360 emulator, underneath for the video and the audio. Yes, we have stuff like Sonic Unleased, which is a full static recomp, as well as on the video and audio side of things, and that's where RexGlue wants to go and is working at going right now. It's definitely going to be a transition, and I almost wanted to call this video RexGlue 2 Recomp Boogaloo, but I just decided to go with the title I picked. But honestly, recomps and PC source ports are not going anywhere, and there's a ton of amazing games on the Xbox 360 that can be statically recompiled or made to play better on PC. And when we talked about Blue Dragon here, this was one of the first games ever even showing any code running when I initially talked about RexGlue as an application. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. But right now, and I've talked about it in previous videos, what RexGlue does is statically recompiles the PowerPC code into a portable C++ format, and that's something that will run on modern operating systems and modern instruction set CPUs. But it always used Xenia under the hood compared to, like I said, Sonic Unleashed, which was a full static recomp across the board. There was no emulation under it. That was always RexGlue's plan, but they wanted to make RexGlue because it was kind of a Swiss Army knife of figuring out exactly how to statically recompile the Xbox 360 PowerPC code. When I say that, I mean the game code, the logic of the game, not so much the video or the audio or any of the general I/O that you would actually need to control it. And they've been very successful with that because, of course, we have a bunch of different Xbox 360 recomps, some of which actually even improve on what Xenia can do. The most recent Deadly Premonition static recomp, better than playing on Xenia, and hands down better than playing the PC port, which is bugged and has a massive memory leak. So it's not like using Xenia underpinning anything was a quote-unquote bad thing, even if maybe a few people don't love it out there. It was a stepping stone to get to the next evolution of what RexGlue is going to be, and that is what we're talking about today. So basically the work hierarchy moving forward is RexGlue is going to handle all of the static PowerPC recompilation like it does now. Then every developer is going to want to go in and actually deal with their own runtimes and rendering on a per game basis, dealing with that in actual code. And that will be a more bespoke system so that games that need certain aspects of that code to be touched or amended will, but it isn't going to be something where you're doing work that isn't necessary. Because as I like to remind people on pretty much all of these videos, something like the Xbox 360 is a piece of hardware with a feature set. It has certain implementations on both the audio, video, and code side of things in the PowerPC CPU, and not every single game is going to use 100% of them. Something like the most recent Daytona USA static recomp we saw, that may only use certain functions of the GPU, where another recomp may use those plus an additional 10, 15, or 20. So really this is allowing for developers to go in and do that work themselves and make sure that it has everything it needs for that game, nothing more and nothing less. Exactly like we saw on the actual Sonic Unleashed side of things, except not using that particular tool set, but it is moving itself away from Xenia. And I've seen some really interesting test examples of how these new bespoke implementations are going to go. Now there is a static recomp in the works, and the developer asked me not to share that information with you as to what it is, so I've blurred the ever-loving hell out of this like an episode of Cops from the 90s. And even if it isn't working quote-unquote correctly, it is showing progress, and when you guys see this, you will probably be very impressed because it's going to be a very fun recompilation. And please don't guess in the comments, somebody might accidentally just get it right, and then everyone will know because I was sworn to secrecy, and that's why the mosaic on this has so many different pixels. But the point is, this is how RexGlue recomps are going to go in the future, but of course we all know that it also can be forked, so you might still see some recomps using Xenia underpinning everything, and that is totally fine. These are open source projects and they are subject to what people want to do, but the main RexGlue team wants it to be a 100% static recomp, so that's what they're doing. For soundtrack samples, then I can talk about audio afterwards. So when we talk about audio, we talk about Xenia and the lack of Xenia moving forward in mainline RexGlue, what you really need to understand is the Xbox 360 might seem like a modern piece of hardware even though it is old, but the way it functions with the GPU and all of the other associated silicon on board is completely different than your modern PC. Yes, it is base value, it executes codes and does calls to all of the audio and video hardware so that it can render an image and actually produce audio, but that is older technology compared to the GPU and sound hardware and everything else you're going to be having in your PC when you play these things. So you basically have to deal with all of that at runtime to be able to make sure everything is in fact working. So when an Xbox 360 sends a call to the GPU for a certain shader effect or anything else, it's dealing with the GPU silicon inside of an Xbox 360. Now that call might not be compatible or even exist on a modern AMD or NVIDIA GPU, so you have to handle all those in the code moving forward with RexGlue. Where in something like Xenia, it's emulating that hardware, so technically all those calls should be incorporated and you can just run them. But Xenia, even though it is an impressive emulator, is not a complete emulator, so on some of these static recomps, you see the same visual glitches you would see in Xenia emulation, and on others like Deadly Premonition, the static recomp developers actually go in and amend code and fix things in the background to make sure it looks even better and runs better than Xenia, which means they can also spend their time kind of playing around with code and just moving Xenia away from their workflow entirely. And even though this isn't going to make much sense for a lot of people out there, in the most recent RexGlue commit, it is basically removing Xenia from the overall architecture. Apparently it still can be called for if you really need to use it, but the RexGlue team, at least the developers of the tool, want people to transition over to this new format of actually making these recomps. So I will leave a link in the description below for the few of you who are going to understand these code commits and what they actually mean, and for the rest of you, just understand that it's basically pulling Xenia back from RexGlue and putting the control and the power in the hands of each and every developer to go ahead and deal with those runtime codes themselves so that they can get the best performance and best look out of their game. And that does make sense because you don't really want to do work that you don't need to do, because bringing it back to that idea of every single game doesn't use every single function of the Xbox 360 hardware, that's basically how life works. Think of it this way: if you have to go outside and fix your car, you don't take every tool in your garage, ones that you're never going to use for the job, you just take the tool set out that you need to accomplish the task at hand. That is the same thing with a static recomp and doing all of the code for video and audio yourself. You're only using the tools and you're only doing the work that is necessary to make sure it works. You're not taking out a tool set or doing work that aren't useful for your own project. And that is definitely going to mean that some games might take longer to make, but hopefully the result will be more interesting. One more soundtrack sample and I'll be right back. The first soundtrack sample may have been for a technical explanation following it, but the second soundtrack sample just because I love the music in Goldeneye. So now moving forward, the expectation is that every single RexGlue developer is going to go in and deal with the audio, video, or in this instance the hardware underlying it themselves in code, the same way we saw when we saw the Sonic Unleased recompilation project. All of the PowerPC recompilation is going to be the same, because obviously RexGlue is already successful with that because we see all these recomps. And again, it's open source software, so you might still see some people using it, but hopefully this leads into a future where you'll get more work that might be more tailor-made for one specific game. You leave me a comment down below and you tell me what's the one game you want to see recompiled next outside of using Xenia. I would be curious. For me personally, that Deadly Premonition recomp kind of made my dreams come true, at least with the game I would have picked, so I'm going to leave my choice blank on this one. But that's the news moving forward. Again, I definitely made this more conversational than technical. If you want to read the GitHub notes, you definitely can, and I'm sure the RexGlue team will give you more information soon. But I was chatting with the developers, basically going back and forth as to the how to explain it, and it's one of those things I always remember and always think, you don't know what I know, you don't know what developers know, so it's my job to kind of conversationally articulate that to you, the same way that when I'm teaching my college students, it's my job to make sure they understand how to learn what I know, and me never expect them to know it themselves before I teach them. But sure, we're done. RexGlue is changing. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.